Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I want to talk about No Man's Sky. They just had a really big update, and the whole history of this game is complete madness, so I just had to jump in. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, I'm going to dive right in. If you guys don't know, No Man's Sky came out back in 2016, and it rode a wave of overpromising like even Peter Molyneux couldn't quite keep up with. That guy, Sean Murray, or Sean Murray, however you say it, went on a number of platforms and just promised the world. I watched a few of them before I made this video. I would say I'd be a little suspect of how he did it because there were quite a few times that someone would ask him a question and there was enough hesitation that I personally wouldn't have trusted what he was saying. I would have been like, really? Really? You're going to say that? But he did. And most of them were pretty easy to debunk, especially once the game came out. Things like, yes, everybody's playing in the same world, but then you'll never see each other because the universe is so vast. And then, of course, gamers being that what they are, they manage to find a planet, go to the exact same coordinates. For one guy, it's daytime. For one guy, it's night. They don't see each other. Big debunk, along with half the other stuff he said. And ultimately, they generated the kind of sales they probably wanted to, but not through the method that they should have, because of course, there were a lot of disgruntled gamers, and that lasted for quite a while. Now, since then, they have put out a ton of major updates. I've got the list here, and I'm just looking at things like base building, some new game modes, and the ability to purchase freighters. They added land vehicles. They improved the graphics. They added different kinds of weapons. They brought in a new story. They even improved the graphics again. They put in some more multiplayer. They added a bunch of new planets. Then the next one they did was true multiplayer with base sharing and co-op exploration. You could go into third-person view, which consequently was something that Sean said, well, the only way you're ever going to know what you look like is if someone tells you. Well, they fixed that. And then they focused on expanding basically underwater content with a bunch of new monsters and features and Exocraft submarine. I mean, I missed that one. It's pretty amazing. They added different biomes. They varied the terrain, changed the visual diversity, because one of the complaints in the game was that it got a little bit samey. People were bored because they'd go to a planet and they're like, oh, wow, look, it's almost exactly the same. They then added a massive expansion, which had virtual reality, expanded the multiplayer even more, increased the number of features across the game. I don't know specifically what they were, but that was the Beyond patch. I guess they called that one 2.0. Then we've got starship salvaging, upgrades, multi-tool ownership, multiple. I don't know why you needed that, but that's cool. A bunch of more building options. The living ship was added a new class of biological starship, kind of like the Voyager, I guess. A new story, and then more space encounters. I mean, I'm going on and on. There's only a few more, so I may as well go through them. They introduced the Exocraft, added new technologies for bases, dramatically expanded the universe with more varied and richer planets, new creatures, dramatic landscapes. The waypoint system provided a complete overhaul of the game's progression system, allowing players to customize their experience. That's cool. And then the beacon system allowed new settlements, secretive autophage race, adding significant depth to settlement management and exploration. And then, of course, this new one where you can make these massive ships together and cruise around together to explore and jump off of them, do all kinds of crazy stuff. I think that one's called the Voyager patch. It's something that a friend on Facebook basically said, put this on par or above Starfield. Not that it needed too much. I mean, they are very different games, obviously. You know, Starfield has a lot of dialogue and characters, and No Man's Sky doesn't. So I guess I want to talk about what I think of No Man's Sky in general. So first, before I go on, I want to say that I think No Man's Sky story is complete insanity. I think the fact that this guy made all these promises and people bought into it, not talking crap about people who bought into this, because he was convincing in a lot of the interviews, and what he described was amazing. But I think that by doing what they did to get so many sales up front does taint the overall experience. And I saw a little bit about that in some other YouTube videos from several years back where people are like, yeah, it's cool that they came out with tons of patches and they're doing great stuff, but how did they get there? Where did they find the money for that? Well, they got it by basically lying to people, and then, people played it too long to refund. And so they had this massive amount of money to spend on doing this kind of thing. And now they're doing the Light No Fire game, which smartly enough, as they add things to that, they are applying them to No Man's Sky. So as they work on their new game, they can test things on No Man's Sky, giving No Man's Sky players new stuff to check out and play with, but at the same time ensuring that their next game is going to have all the systems in place that they want. I kind of struggle because on one hand, it was so disingenuous what they did, but I kind of feel like I don't really want to blame the developers. I don't necessarily believe that they were like, yeah, go out and tell them that all this stuff is real, man. Just oversell it. I don't buy that. I think they were probably like, what are you doing? Dude, that's not in the game. There's no multiplayer. X, Y, and Z. And he's like, we'll just get it in there. But then, even he came out at the end. He's like, yeah, well, we had no more money and we had to release it or we were going to lose, blah, blah, blah. And rather than just be honest and say, hey, we're going to release this game, it's going to be kind of rough, and then after we get it out there, we're going to do some patching and updates, they just basically got people in on the ground floor through a bunch of false pretenses, and then we get what we get, and a bunch of people were pretty mad. Now, one of the videos I saw, because I watched quite a few, one of the videos I saw, the people were like, there's tons of people that comment on my videos that say they are never going to try it again. Now, I don't know if that's true. That was several years ago. Maybe people have softened a little bit and come back, especially as they continually add more and more impressive features to the game. I all around think that it's a fairly impressive endeavor. Now, I've never gotten into No Man's Sky that much. So I tried it when it first came out, and I quickly was able to detect that it was not going to be my kind of game because it was a little bit too generic. And what I mean by that is that it just throws you right in the middle of the survival without any pre-established lore. So like Conan Exiles does that as well, but I mean, we've got the Conan world behind it. And if you know anything about Conan, you can kind of just keep in the back of your mind that there's all these nations out in the world doing stuff and that you are on the fringe of that environment doing what you're doing. But with No Man's Sky, it's just a vast universe of nothing, and you're just some character that you don't even know what you look like because you're always in the spacesuit, and what aliens you do encounter just basically click and look at you weird. So I pretty much refunded the game right away and was like, I'll just see where this goes much, much later. And much later came, the game was finally 50% off, and that's about all that it ever does when it goes on sale, by the way, is it drops about 50%. So I picked it up again and I played it for another 45 minutes, and I was like, nah, I'm still not quite there. So what I did for this footage is it just happens to be on Xbox Game Pass. And with the new Voyagers update, I thought I'll install it and take a look. Well, unfortunately, since I had never played the game for more than an hour, I pretty much had to start over. And then, of course, you go through the beginning, which is the legacy stuff. So the vast majority of the things that they've done for quality of life and improvements are, a ways down the line for me. That said, I still did enjoy wandering around and, going through the initial steps because for whatever reason, maybe because I played Conan a bunch and Dune and all this other stuff, maybe it was just easier to sort of choose my own adventure because, that's kind of what you have to do in this game is you do follow the line to get the hyperdrive and all this other stuff and sort of learn. But ultimately, how you go about it is up to you. Running around, building a base if you want to, doing what you need to do. All around, I don't know. I found it to be at least a little fun. It was kind of frustrating at times. You've got a lot of different materials that you got to worry about and not a lot of inventory space. and some of the menu systems are a little annoying. But I mean, it is a game from 2016. It's almost a decade old, and they're still updating it, and it still looks pretty darn good. I mean, it's cartoony, but I think it's neat. I like the way that you just like find your ship all trashed and you got to fix it. And then you just hop in it and you're just in orbit in a few moments, flying around, go to a space station, hop to the next system. And now that with the teleport system where you can actually just pop back to different places, that's even more insane. So, I don't know. I just, on one hand, I think it's just absolutely amazing that we have this game that by every metric should have completely failed after they lied to everybody and didn't produce what they said they would. But it has quite honestly thrived for a decade, and people are playing it. There's a lot going on. Keep making cool patches. It's just weird. Peter Molyneux probably wishes that he had a game that had this much credibility after all of his fibbing. But I don't know. I think that this is definitely a game that would be a lot more fun if you were playing with someone else. Playing it solo, I find it a little tiny bit boring. That's such the wrong word. It's not that it's boring. It just, there's this sense that even though I'm kind of having fun, I also have in the back of my mind that I'm just not doing something that has value. And that's a weird thing to say. I mean, video games in general are kind of a waste of time if you want to be an ass. At the very least, they are a pastime. There's something to be enjoyable. And while I am enjoying it, I just can't get over this feeling that I could be playing something else that would be more entertaining. That's more on me than No Man's Sky. I don't even know. I can't even figure out what I'm feeling when I play it. It just has this strange generic feeling the whole time I'm playing, and I don't get that. I really don't. But for whatever reason, that's how I feel about it. I'd be very curious to know what other people think of No Man's Sky. Now, I know there's these crazy events that can jump you right into things, and, you know, I'm kind of waiting for one of those. I guess they're called expeditions, and that sounds really cool. So I kind of look forward to trying one of those and seeing what happens. Probably will whenever they do a new one. A friend of mine said that it's probably coming with that Voyagers update. But for right now, if you have Game Pass and you've never played No Man's Sky, I do recommend it. You might actually find it freaking amazing, especially if you can really dive into the choose your own adventure, wander around on planets and do what you want to do. I think it's absolutely worth it. If, on the other hand, you're much more into a guided story, something a little bit more on the lines of Starfield or a Fallout kind of game, No Man's Sky might be a hard sell because it doesn't really have that kind of depth, at least as far as I've seen. And please, if you've played this game a super ton, correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me about the storyline that happens later and how in-depth it gets, because I'd love to know. Again, my experience does not really count. I'm speaking more about how crazy it is that this game has received so many updates and that the updates have changed it so much. My experience is so limited that it's not a barometer for you to decide to play. Unless, of course, you're going to have to start over from the beginning. Then I can tell you, you're going to need some endurance to get through the legacy stuff that effectively was when the game was considered quote unquote crap. Once you get past it, I'm sure that you're going to start to see all of those new cool things. Sort of like back in the old days when an MMO had been out for a while, but you didn't try it. And then you jump in and you've got to get through the beginning zones because they haven't updated them yet. So you're going through all of this old crappy material where they didn't quite know how to organize quests or bring you up to speed as well as they do in the future, where you're going to start playing the newer content. And then you get to that and you're like, oh, now I see what everyone's talking about. I feel like No Man's Sky will be like that for me as well. But again, if you've played this game a lot, let me know. Let me know what your experience is with it. Let me know what you think of the whole history of No Man's Sky. What do you think about Sean Murray and all of his promises? And do you think it was disingenuous? Do you think the game is built on a foundation of just shady practice? Let me know in the comments. We'll talk about it. But anyway, I think that's enough from me about this game. I'm going to get back to it and see how far I can get, see if there's anything else to talk about. I kind of suspect that I'm going to leave it here unless somebody comes back and has some stunning reason to dump another 40 hours into it. I think I'm kind of good with just tinkering around a little bit. But anyway, this is Robert with Society Case Files, signing off.